And here we are again, live from beautiful downtown Oakland, California, for another talk with the Nine-Sided Circle. Tonight's topic is going to be fate and destiny. And did you know that there's a difference? So, here's the thing. Everybody is born with a destiny, and everybody has a fate. Your fate, and I have to tell you that this topic tends to upset people. So if I upset you, I apologize beforehand so that you know that it's not done maliciously. But for some reason, a lot of people don't like hearing about this. What can you do? So, fate. Fate is what you get along with things like your fixation, your enneagrammatic fixation and such things. It is the mechanical outcome of your life. And I know that probably each of every one of you has met somebody and you look at them and you go, that person is going to end up like this. And they do. Because the series of choices that you make when you operate from your commanding self, your fixation, all lead to an inevitable outcome. And you don't have to do anything to experience your fate. It will just happen automatically for you. So, do you think this is true or possible? Good. Okay, so along with your fate, you also have a destiny. Your destiny is what you get when you step away from your fate and consciously work to fulfill themselves. Nancy says, I think some people are affected by good or bad luck. I don't believe that there is any such thing as good or bad luck. So there are events. There are how you deal with events. So you take somebody who has had really bad luck, according to how things go. Who am I thinking of? Was a very famous psychologist who was a prisoner in one of the internment camps in World War II. He was Jewish, and they drug him into a camp, and he was there for years, and he watched people collapse around him, and yet he didn't. He survived. He came out of the camp. He flourished afterwards and created an entire school of psychology that is still in use today. Yes, Viktor Frankl. That's who I'm thinking of. Couldn't pull up his name. I'm getting old. Names are the first thing to go. Yeah, Frankl is a great example of somebody who did not allow being tossed in to a Nazi death camp to be bad luck for him. So luck is one of those things. I used to tell my students, if you want to be lucky, learn to pay attention. Because what we think of as good luck and bad luck, which is related to this topic, is what you look for. If you spend your time looking for the opportunities in life and looking for the good things that can happen to you, you will find them. And yes, you will find some negative stuff too, because none of us escape this life without negative things. Chance is different than luck. There is definitely chance. And the more you are bound to your fate, the more you're bound to chance. But chance is not luck. I walk down the street, a dog runs out, bites me on the leg. That's chance. It happens. Perhaps if I had paid more attention, I would have seen that the gate to that house is open and maybe avoided it, but it has nothing to do with anything other than the random happenings of life. Everybody gets sick. There is, I mean, maybe there's somebody somewhere who has never ever been sick in their entire life, but even they end up dead. So all of these things are either mechanical or intentional. So you have somebody who never does anything with their life. They just follow the script that has been written through them, through their childhood, through their parents and whatever. You can pretty much predict how their life is going to turn out. You can't always hit on every specific point, but the general pattern is always there, and it's observable. And oftentimes people know it. I remember working with a 17-year-old girl, very troubled, and I asked her where she thought she would be in 10 years, and she thought that she would be a single mother with a couple of children living in a trailer in the sticks. And that was her script. That was what was going to happen to her. And she, even though she knew it, she didn't know how to change it. And oftentimes these things seem to have a certain inevitability. But I am here tonight to suggest to you that it is possible to, in one step, to move from your fate, which is, as I said, mechanical, to your destiny, which is intentional. I think another question is coming in. I hear keyboards clicking. Well, as they come in, the question is, how do you do this? And it's not easy, because the first step in order to do this is like 12-step programs where the first step is to admit that you have a problem, and that's the hardest step. You have to admit to yourself that you have been living a mechanical life, that you have been following the pattern. Now, everybody who's listening to me here has got an edge on this, because the fact that you're listening here means that you've been struggling away from the mechanical aspect of your life. This is a good thing. This is why you can probably hear what I'm going to say to you tonight and not want to burn me at the stake too much. So, here we are. We are being driven from birth to death along a particular path that is laid out for us in a very stimulus response fashion. If you're born poor, you're likely to stay poor. You won't get educated, all of that kind of stuff. If you're born rich, you're liable to stay rich. You'll have more opportunities open for you. All of these things are purely they are part of what we call the vast machine. The vast machine churns out lives. And the first step to getting off of that track is to admit to yourself in a very serious way that, yeah, a whole lot of my life has been mechanical, and I still have these mechanical patterns that are pushing me in this direction. And yet, I have decided that I don't want to go in that direction. The second step is to ask yourself, what is my meaning? This is hard because when you're young, you don't know. And when you're old, you think, oh, I can't do it. But everybody can move towards their meaning. Meaning is deeper than purpose to me. Purpose is action. Meaning is like the deepest part of yourself. Who are you? The famous Ramana Maharishi question, who are you? And once you can get a sense of that, and you don't need to know it all, at least not at first, you just need the sense of it, you have to ask yourself, what steps can I take consciously to interrupt my fate and move towards my destiny? Because your meaning is the arrow pointing to your destiny. So let's say, for instance, Dave. We're going to pick on you, Dave. Dave's meaning may be to be a person who facilitates a very specific kind of physical experience that allows people to free themselves from their own mechanistic nature. That could be his meaning, or at least part of his destiny in doing that. And we have Nick. Nick's destiny is not to be an adjunct professor of philosophy at a podunk college. But that could be his fate. Is this kind of making sense so far? Any questions? So you can only work towards your destiny in an awake state. You cannot sleep your way to your destiny. So the third step is wake up. It is bring yourself as frequently as possible from the somnambulistic state that is part and parcel of your fate as you careen down life towards the black hole at the end of it. And then we get to the question, how do I wake up? We've talked about this. Is anybody here not experienced at least moments of awakening using any of the things that I've been teaching you guys since I started doing this a few months ago? Good, I'm loving seeing this. I just realized I've only been doing this since I guess it would be the start of that Ultimate Enneagram workshop. Would probably be, yeah, maybe the beginning, but at least August for sure. I've only been doing this from
No,
August.
since May.
May.
Yes, the Ultimate Enneagram.
Yeah, if that's the start, then it's been since May. If it's when I decided that the nine-sided circle had to come into existence, it's been August. Time flies when you're having fun. So, who here thinks that they have some sense of what their destiny is? Yeah, Dave, I would suspect that you would be the one person I can count on for that answer. Are you with us, Nick? I haven't seen a single thing from you yet. Nick,
yeah, I'm here. I'm very sick, though.
Okay, then I will not put too much weight on you tonight. So, who wants to give us a sense of what their destiny is? Besides Dave, because we already know Dave. So you're excused from this. When you know, what is it that you know? This is the next question. I hear somebody breathing. No one?
Mushtak.
Yes.
I could try to participate here. I guess the number one thing I struggle with the destiny is why do anything at all?
And the answer is, why not do anything at all?
That's usually the response I give myself, yes.
Yeah. There is no reason why you should do anything at all. You are allowed to run out your life in a purely mechanical fashion, following your fate. You get that as a freebie with this life. And you may just have an inclination to do more. Aaron says, I have many interests, so it is hard to identify a destiny to do it all exactly. So my question would be, what if your interests were a Venn diagram, where would they all meet? That's oftentimes a way you can do this. Dave, that's exactly correct. When you finally accept your destiny, the question of why do it becomes irrelevant. Okay, so Rania says, when I know, I feel more grounded. Yeah, that's definitely the case. That I have a message to help people and others, that you have to get awakened and realize that you are on autopilot. This is a very important message. This is a message that has to be given over and over again. And how one gives that message becomes part of your destiny. And Ahmed says, sometimes I am stretched between my meaning, who I am, who am I, who I am, and my duties that I have to do. If you have duties that are placed upon you, you need to evaluate their value according to your meaning, according to your destiny. Sometimes some duties can be given up, some duties can't. There are some things that are incumbent upon us as human beings that we're stuck doing. And a destiny will take that into account. Very few people have the destiny of becoming a hermit wandering in the wilderness, living off honey and locusts. Fortunately, that's not my destiny, because honey and locust sounds kind of gross. So, think for a moment about your fate. If you were to run out the rest of your life automatically, just doing whatever you're doing, going with the indwelling impulses in you, where would you go? And you don't need to answer this, but what would your life be like? Think about that for a moment. Where does your life end up? For some of you, the question will not have as much meaning as for others. So let me give you an example. For me, my fate was to have been to be poor and uneducated my entire life, to probably work some menial job, doing something without too much purpose, and then dying young. I've spent my whole life rejecting that particular fate. And that includes, though I came from an impoverished family, I figured out how to get myself through college and grad school. Though there was I had no role models for anybody being successful in the world. And I had to figure out how to do that myself. And if you know where your life will take you if you don't act, that becomes a real motivator sometimes for acting. I mean, maybe if you're really rich and powerful, you go, oh, I'm really enjoying just being asleep and living off of the proceeds of my wealth. In my experience, this is never the case, though. I mean, show of hands, who thinks that Donald Trump is actually having fun right now? No, he is not having fun. He is a miserable puppy. It is not good to be him, even though he is living out his fate. His fate was to become theoretically the most powerful man in the world. And look what it's got him. Nothing. No, bin Laden didn't go against his fate. Bin Laden was programmed from childhood. Bin Laden was a walking, talking meat robot. He was a perfect example of the commanding self in complete control of a being. So bin Laden's destiny remained completely unrealized. So here's a question for you. How would I know that bin Laden lived out his fate rather than his destiny? Yeah, for him, being rich was not the driving force of his fate. Being angry was. What was he angry about? He was also angry that everybody was not acting the way he thought they should. If you look at the Wahhabi movement, basically what it is some people who have this whole list of rules about how people must behave. And that is a substitute for religion. Bin Laden wanted everybody who did not behave the way he wanted them to go die. Yeah, of course. All of these guys who are doing the Islamic State stuff and all of that have perverted the religion. The Prophet would not recognize them. The companions would not recognize them. Yeah, but then, Jesus would not recognize Christianity. Moses would not recognize Judaism. The Buddha would sure as hell not recognize his teachings. This is a kind of a universal thing. And that's fate, by the way. There is a fate of religion. And the fate of religion says that a religion will not survive intact for more than one generation past the founder.
Mushtaq, is
Yes.
fate marked by the amount of rules that are put into play?
Very much so. And this goes back to what we were talking about for the last 6 weeks on the Saturday class. Understanding the restrictions put upon being allows you to understand whether or not a person is moving through their fate or through their destiny. Fate becomes more and more restrictive as the life goes on. Destiny becomes less and less restrictive. People like Trump, Bin Laden, all of those guys are basically operating at the level of 96 on Gurdjieff's creation scale. They are just mechanisms, and the fact that they're mechanisms made out of meat instead of metal does not let us see so easily that they are robots. Moving to destiny means that we have the possibility of becoming what Gurdjieff called man for. You don't get it automatically. You still got to work for it. Here's a question for everybody but Vivian. Who knows what robot means? Yeah, she's laughing there because yes, it is a Czech word. Close. Nancy, you're very close, and it's actually true. It actually means something. Okay, Vivian, you can tell us. No, you don't want to tell us. Robot, literally translated, means slave. It means something with no free will at all. So, yes, you are right. No free will. And this is why I tend to refer to people who are operating through their commanding self as robots, because they are slaves to their fate. And that's actually when you say people are slaves, they aren't slaves to somebody else. They aren't slaves to an external master in most places and most times. They are slaves to their fate. And we know from history over and over again, people who, yes, external considering, people who have been objectively been slaves, who have been owned by other people, when they have accepted their destiny, they are no longer slaves regardless. There are any number of examples of that. One of my favorites is the example of Bilal, who most of you are not going to recognize that name. Bilal was a Nubian slave at the time of Muhammad, who rejected his slavery and became, yes, Bilal, became not just one of the Prophet's companions, but the first person to make the call to prayer. Very important person. And yet he started out life as a slave. And, you know, you can't keep a good man down. So when you reject your internal slavery, it is very hard. Yes, you are indeed correct, Nancy. History is full of these people. You know, the moment that you reject your internal slavery, it becomes very difficult to keep you enslaved externally. I mean, you can kill somebody, but that doesn't mean you can't put them back in the box. Yes, Vivian, exactly. The prophet recognized him as somebody who had special qualities. Um, and yeah, they saved his life. His master was going to kill him because he would not reject Islam. And so, they took up a collection and bought him out of slavery. But that's the point. At that point, he could not be re-enslaved, no matter what. Dave, explain to everybody what a type C influence is, because we have to be careful not to use language that everybody doesn't understand. Okay, so you remember me talking about the magnetic center. I think almost all of you were there, and how that becomes something that attracts the fragments of the eye when you are trying to glue yourself back together again, so that the many eyes become one eye. And I would have to say that in all probability, that sort of influence happens when you begin to accept your destiny, and it's part of the acceptance process. Here's another thing. The acceptance of one's destiny is a process. It doesn't usually happen in one instant. You have to be really super special for it to happen in one instant. It is kind of unnerving. Nancy mentions it's unnerving for me to think that practically everything is dead post first generation institution. It's plausible, though. Yes, it is. And while every now and again you get somebody who tries to renew a religion, like Francis of Assisi gave it his best shot for renewing Christianity in his lifetime. But I'm pretty sure it's some sort of natural law, some sort of spiritual entropy that gets gets everything moving towards its lowest state. Very, very hard to maintain anything like that, which doesn't mean that there isn't value. I don't think, Dave, that it relates to group size, because it can happen even in small groups. When with Christianity, it happened when Christianity was still very small. And that was when Paul, Saul of Tarsus, who became Paul, entered into the scene and began perverting the teachings of Jesus into something that was a social club. And he won that particular battle, even though James, the bishop of Jerusalem, the brother of Jesus, he used to send out teachers to follow Paul around and go after him and try and correct the mistakes that he made. But when you say to a group of people, look, you can have the kingdom, but you're going to have to work for it, versus you say to a bunch of people, oh, you can have the kingdom, you just have to say the magic words and do what I tell you. What's going to happen? There's a cartoon that circulates around the internet every now and again, and it's two little kiosks with somebody sitting behind each one, and one says comforting lies and the other says painful truths. And there's a big long line for the comforting lies, and there are nobody at the painful truths.
Mushtak, is there a map to the acceptance process of one's destiny?
Not written out anywhere. I am actually giving you the map right now, or at least bits and pieces of it, as much as I can give you in an hour. Now, all of this leads into something that we talked about last night with the concept of the hidden conversation. Because your fate and your destiny are part of the hidden conversation. They are part of the conversation that goes on within yourself that leads you to one or the other of these things. Now, sometimes you got to wonder how it is that a person can get the sense that they can move from one state to the other. And it can happen in various ways. In some ways, it can happen accidentally. You just kind of bump into the idea. Another way is that you can hear about it. Like right now, this very instant, I have told you this thing, and you cannot unhear it. This is why people get mad. You will never be able to unhear this. And for the rest of your life, you will know that there are two paths that you can take. And it is up to you to choose which one it is. And that's can be a little uncomfortable. You have to be careful who you tell that to. Ahmed observes that Robert Kagan talks about hidden assumptions as the cause of immunity to change. That seems pretty accurate to me. There are a bunch of assumptions that everybody makes at an unconscious level. Most of them, again, are purely mechanical. In Sanskrit, it's called a samskara, which is translated as a subliminal memory trace that controls the choices that you make and the perceptions that you have. Your language controls the choices that you make and the perceptions that you have. I mean, has anybody here not read 1984? It may have been a long time ago, but think about what they were doing with Newspeak. Newspeak, they were working on removing the possibility of certain concepts ever finding their way into the language. Because they pointed out, if you can't think it, you can't do it. And you can only think it in words. Vivian doesn't understand how someone can get angry about what I am saying. It's actually really easy. It's really, really easy. You have to remember that most people get very, very uncomfortable when you begin to wake them up. Just the thought of having both a fate and a destiny begins to produce a little produce a little awakening. And actually, Nancy, I think you're wrong about that. I think that it's more people get angry if they feel they're being told to do something that they don't want to do. Ahmed, I do not. I do not think our horoscope has much of anything to do with our fate. I am not a big believer in astrology. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means that I don't believe it. Though I had a girlfriend once when I was very young who was an astrologer who could do amazing things with people's charts. She could tell you stuff about yourself that nobody knew reading the charts. But I came to the conclusion that the chart was just a vehicle for her own incredibly well-developed intuition. And since she believed she had to look at a chart in order to know these things, she looked at a chart and then she knew those things. But that's just my take on it. I think that what your fate is comes from the things that you inherit from your family and your environment, plus certain internal habits. And your fate is based entirely in your conditioning and your imprinting. I should mention that fate and imprinting tend to be pretty closely tied because the imprints allow you to see certain things and not others. So, the subject of tonight's talk is destiny. And I've outlined the first baby steps that one takes in order to begin to discover their destiny. And then it's up to you if you do it or not. Do I care if you find your destiny? Yeah, probably, yeah. I mean, I have connection with all of you, so I actually do care. For most of the world, I don't. People get to do what they want to do. But you guys are kind of, you have wormed your way into my heart. What can I say? So I actually care if you guys, I mean, I wouldn't force you, but I actually care if you guys do fate or destiny, because fate never ends well, no matter what. Destiny, even if it seems to end badly, doesn't. If that makes sense.
Moshtalk, is the hidden conversation and inner narrative synonymous?
No. No, next week we're going to dive into what the hidden conversation is, how one uses it, how it becomes a tool. I will tell you that it has both its internal and external qualities. The internal qualities are you get to see how the hidden conversation helps pattern your life one way or the other. The external, all of you know that Sufis are noted for being magicians, right? We do magical things. We pull rabbits out of our hats, right? We do the deal. Look, no coin. We do all of that. That is mostly done through the hidden conversation. It isn't real. There's a word, karamat, if I remember correctly. I'm looking at you guys. Spiritual powers. Yeah, cities in Sanskrit. I'm trying to think of the Arabic word. I'm pretty sure it's Karamat. Yes, good. I have not forgotten all of my Arabic, only most of it. Exactly. So, there are two forms of this, one of which is semi-miraculous. And that's not what I'm talking about. You know, that's where a saint appears to you, though he's hundreds of miles away and things like that. There is that. But then there is the kind of magic that happens just through interaction. It's much subtler. And that is where that comes out of the hidden conversation. And so we are going to begin to address both of those things, and it'll probably take a couple of months of talking just to give you the outline of it. And I'm assuming that this is going to be of interest. Yes, Dave, you've actually had a chance to experience a little bit of this when you were out here. All right, it's getting on towards time to wrap this up. And let me see, I have announcements. Tell all of your friends to buy the Ultimate Enneagram course because it's incredibly cool. And it's at ultimateenneagram.com. I am going to leave the links to all of the Three Forces talks up for a month. So watch them as much as you want. During that time, I will be taking the diagrams and various notes that I've made and putting them together as a PDF for you guys. After that time, that material, I'm going to pull it off, and it's going to become a product like the Ultimate Enneagram that people can buy. But you guys get first crack at it before it becomes that. I'm going to leave it up there for long enough that you get a good chance to review everything. End of January is going to be the beginning of the 10-week Enneagram of Personality seminar, where we will go in depth to all of the fixations and what they mean and how one works with them. I suspect that it's going to take longer than an hour to go through each one of them. So the classes might go on a little bit longer than usual. And I will have more information on that very, very soon. I am also creating MP3 files for all of the talks that I've done from the beginning to now, which I'm going to bundle up in a place for download. So people can listen to them in their car, because who wouldn't want to? So there's my commercials. And any last questions? And you can just put your mic on and ask the questions too. All right. Well, then I am going to sign off the air here, and we will see you all next Sunday.